All right, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, good night, whatever it is to you. One of those things I wanted to cover what's been quite a chaotic week and just some observations on my behalf and going through this week. I tend to be more of a political person. When I was born in 1975, I can remember my uh, mother telling me from a young age that our job in this world was to make this world a better place than the one we came into. And I know, I've talked to a lot of people lately about the regression, and I'm going to cover that tonight. Because it's really, to me, it's very frustrating to have seen so much change through my life and my generation to where we are now. I feel like we've gone through a huge period of regression now instead of progression. Where, I mean, we were once fighting as a nation for one love, and I always take this back to Bob Marley from way back upon a time, and give thanks and praise to the Lord, and it'll be all right. But now I think we're in a situation where there's so much um, animosity, false witness, worshiping of pastors, and to me, that is something that is so frustrating because, you know, if you don't understand this, I implore you to do some research. I've been through the times of Jim Jones, PTL, Heaven's Gate, Jimmy Swaggart swearing the end of the world was coming at one given Friday. I remember getting out of school in middle school and everybody being, kind of scared to death. And, that's really the way it goes. And now what I see more and more of, and I'm heavily involved in substance abuse and substance abuse issues. And I tell my story for what it is, and I tell it as straight as it is. I don't just believe. My faith tells me that the reason I'm here and I'm breathing is because of God, because what I went through was a death sentence. I mean, I didn't have a choice in any of this. I didn't sit there and I didn't pray for my life. I didn't go through those 5 stages of death and dying. And a lot of this stuff I don't remember, but it's even like my nurse. She's known me a long time. And I always call her Nurse Beth. She is very, very close to me as well, i.e. a girlfriend. And, she could tell me things that I said that I don't remember, like coming home to, for me, for almost the last year, I thought I came home to hospice care, and that's absolutely not in the realm of the truth. I came home and fired hospice care, and she said I kept saying over again and over again that this is God's will. It's not mine this time. And, as crazy as that is to think back on now, it really did pay off. And I know kind of where I left off last week, but, this was the last few weeks of really my death sentence. And I was laying on a bed. I couldn't communicate. Sorry, I thought I turned that off. I couldn't. I was home most of the time by myself, just laying on a bed. I couldn't get up. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I couldn't go get a drink. So, if I didn't have anybody there with me, I couldn't walk. I had a portable commode by my bed, a walker for no reason that I couldn't use. And I was really thirsty that day, like, just very parched, thirsty, like I couldn't hardly swallow. And I took it upon myself to think I could will myself, like I could have control one more time and get out of that bed and drag myself to the kitchen somehow and get a drink. Um, that didn't work out in the least bit. I rolled over off the bed and flopped on the floor. And I remember very much beginning of why me, and then it became to I started praying for forgiveness, and I repeat this a lot. Forgive me if you've heard it. I said, God, please forgive me for the sins I've committed, as I know I committed them in my own free will, and I beg and pray for you to come in my heart and guide me in the right direction. Well, that's so simple and plain, and yet selfish. Um, because once I really got started, I started going backwards. Like, okay, what are examples that I need to be forgiven for? And I mean, it was like 1 to 2 years at a time. I did this, I did that. I was selfish, I was manipulative. And this goes on for like 2.5 hours. And I got really humble at that moment. And for me at the time, I was really kind of an arrogant, functional drunkard. And but so humble, I had these big, huge tears coming out of my eyes. And um I was somehow able to use arm strength and pull myself up in a sitting position where I was leaning back against the bed. And that lasted until Nurse Beth got over to the house, and she was able to um, get me back on the bed and get me a drink and everything. But the week after that, I had a liver appointment, a week or two after that. And, I go in there and I had to be taken in there in a wheelchair and everything, just expecting the worst news. Like my renal failure was, progressing. My liver cirrhosis was progressing. And, just another time where they were going to tell me, I've been really lucky because I kept hearing that, but, I'm a fighter. And, that's not what happened. Um, I get the results back. The doctor, her name's Sabita, and she's a true blessing in my life. She called me and then got me on telehealth on the computer, and she was, as she said, ecstatic. She couldn't believe the results. Everything was healing, and there was in medical terms, there was no chance that I was supposed to come back from this. I mean, no chance. I've told over and over again, it's unexplainable. It's medically unexplainable. And there's been several times when the doctors, just said, I can't explain it. And I've said, yeah, I can. And, point up at the sky. And I do remember specifically one doctor saying to me, what does that even mean, Mr. Napier? And I was like, well, that means you're not going to have a job much longer with me. And, I go from there, and it was still tough getting back to it. I mean, it started with short spurts. I was still dizzy. I took plenty of falls. I remember reaching under the bathroom cabinet to get something one day and went down on my knees, and I couldn't pull myself back up. But at the time when I came home, I was around 115 pounds. Right now, I'm 180. And this is roughly approaching on a year now since I've been home. And somehow, some way, I can do everything I used to be able to do, except I can do it better and consciously and mindful and pay closer attention than I've ever paid attention in my life. When I first got good enough to start driving again, this was around January of this year. I was so filled with wanting to, as I would say, save others, help others, and so on and so on. So I got mixed up in some situations which I very much call a prosperity theology type of deal, where Jesus is kind of left out of the middle of it. And it was almost like getting sucked into a cultist situation. Like, if you don't do it our way, it doesn't work. And since I do this uh, talk show for both substance abuse and mental health, and I take both very seriously. Um, there were things like when I got to thinking, and what got me back into psychology, which I'm finishing up my master's now. And it's when I went through rehab, the faith-based rehab and a regular rehab, you're taught these things called triggers. And it's instilled in your brain that, if somebody's drinking around you, you can't do that. That may cause a trigger. And, if you see a liquor store, it may cause a trigger, just so on, things like that. You can't reasonably go out in public to like a O'Charlie's and not be triggered, according to the counselors and clinicians, which most of these people are freshly out of rehab, and they're called peer support. And their idea of support is having a little bit of power, saying Jesus nonstop, and then going behind the scenes and doing whatever they feel like because they feel they've been anointed, which is a flaw in the system. I'm not saying that people don't deserve a second chance, but I do think it takes human training. And most of mine, well, not most of mine, all of mine has come straight from God. Like I see things that I used to not see because I walked around with blinders on. And it always takes me back to that Matthew 15:14, which means the world to me. I've known that verse for so long, but never really took it in as fully as I should have. And, there's different versions of it, but I always pop off, ignore them for their blind leaders, and the blind will lead the blind into a pit or ditch, depending on the version. But that means a lot to me because there's so many out there bearing false witness, healing, and all these miracle cures. It reminds me of snake oil from when I used to watch westerns with my father. And I will tell you, there's no miracle cure. And I realize my views are controversial, and that doesn't really bother me near a bit, to be honest with you, because you can treat substance abuse, but it's not really a treatment. You can curb it. You can hold it at bay. But the best example I can really, really, truly think of it, that's going to be in layman's terms and people would understand, is that if you're just treating the substance abuse part, the detox, the cravings, the partying, the no responsibility, the selfishness, and so on, you're not getting it. For almost all addiction, there is a root cause, which tends to fall back to a trauma somewhere, somehow in their life. And so if you don't address that and get to root cause, to the effect, it's never going to work. It would be equivalent to clearing out a cyst, popping it, draining it, however you want to say it, but not pulling the sac out. Because what will happen right there is that will refill, and all you've done is put a temporary solution on a permanent problem. I know when I first started going to therapy back in February, they had realized I've been diagnosed with manic and bipolar depression most of my life. But it ends up, after going through some rigorous psychotherapy, that I basically hit every symptom of PTSD. And I did have a childhood where I was severely abused, and I just never, ever addressed that. I did the opposite. I could still feel the pain, but at times I would keep the person who was guilty of it, I would put them on a pedestal like they could do no wrong. And, it's a type of classical conditioning almost. And that's where, when I go into triggers, I've actually already been working on theories on this, meaning that these are just my thoughts. They're possible. It makes sense to me, but when triggers are so heavily taught, for example, that's Pavlovian, where you're ringing a bell and somebody's salivating because they look over at the table next to them and somebody's drinking a beer and they can't handle that. I very much can do that. And this is deliverance from God. The biggest part of my program after all these years, 26 years of different in and outs. And, you know, a lot of times I would do it to make somebody else happy, whether it be a girlfriend or a sibling or something like that. I mean, that's just the route I would take. And I could do that stuff standing on my hands. Because the level I'm at, let's say with the intelligence, is I could speak over people. I knew what they were going to say before they said it. I could have taught these classes. And but when I started really getting down to it and like, you know, I don't have cravings and things like that anymore. I don't feel uncomfortable going in the liquor store to get beer cheese for my girlfriend. I've been offered shots of alcohol in the last month. And honestly, it didn't make me anxious. I didn't get sweaty. I was able to walk out of there whenever the time was. I didn't have to rush out and get in my car, drive a minute, pull over, and hey, thanks God that didn't affect me in any sort of way. So it gave me a little bit of almost a prideful feeling, like, you know, pat myself on the back. That didn't bother me. After 26 years of using that to solve all my problems and going deeper and deeper into the worship of a bottle, now I've got a freedom that I never had before. And that freedom came from Christ. You know, if I'm having a bad day now, I talked about this in a live I did on Facebook last night because I'm a little more, I speak a little bit harsher on there. But the point being is, if I'm having a bad day, like I'll go and get some candles, light them, get in the bathtub, sit in there and meditate and pray. And by the time I get out, I mean, I feel just wonderful. And this is the life that God's given me. So with all this going on over these last few months, it's been a confusing time. It's also been a fruitful time. I've made some enemies from how I'm not scared to speak out about the wrong things. But when you're dealing with rehabilitation and the problems that we're going through now, i.e., fentanyls, and even alcohol is such a dangerous drug. Um, and, you know, when you're dealing with all these, it's not about the profit margin. People can't be products to you. And a lot of these rehabilitation centers, I remember how it was in North Carolina. I don't know all over the world or India or anywhere else this is broadcast, but it's a revolving door when, you know, people will get kicked out and then told they can come back 2 days later. Well, a lot of people don't come back those 2 days later. A lot of people don't ever come back, and a lot of families have to grieve over them. So that's where I'm trying to make an alternative change. And I never thought this would be my mission in life, where my direct job would be working through Christ. I do have a degree in real estate. I've done tremendous in the car business, and I could easily go back and do those things, but it's not. When I pray, God's giving me something. He's handing me something. Something's to the point where it can't be coincidental anymore. You know, I've just reached that grasp on it where there's no way this can be a coincidence. My core group of people that I've started our own alternative type group with, um, you give it a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we would not have been friends or talking to each other, but we've got a common goal through Christ and through conscience to actually assist others. And assist is an important word to me because we don't help anybody. We as humans don't save others. And you'll catch that all the time. I know there's a local rehab around here that advertises saving one life at a time. We don't save lives. We assist God. And if we listen well enough, you can make some unusual bonds, accountability, instead of enabling and giving easy ways out and easy triggers. I will go ahead and be honest on this show because I feel it's important. There's a lot of treatments they use to detox somebody. And I will tell you, the most dangerous detox, people will argue this with me, but please Google it. The most dangerous detox is alcohol. It can be deadly in a heartbeat. Xanax would be right down there from it. And then we've got, the opiates and stuff like that, which, a lot of people are on the fence about Suboxone, for example, which I'll be honest, I was at one time, because a lot of people will prescribe it and use it for long term. The proper way it's supposed to be used is to use it to get rid of the cravings and or compulsions for heroin, fentanyl, Percocet, any kind of those actions, and then to be tapered off the Suboxone. But that doesn't seem to happen. What seems to happen is the people go, if they get cut off Suboxone and not in a well tapered form, i.e., through counseling, therapy, sober living, and so on, it's not going to work. They more than likely will turn back to the streets. That's not to say that some don't make it through it and some can be saved. But with those some, you have to pay really close attention. There's a lot of anxiety that's misdiagnosed in this world. My PTSD for all those years was misdiagnosed. And I will tell you right now, through Christ, that I feel the best I have in my adult life. I'm more cognitive. I can still come off as an asshole at times, but I'm not doing it to hurt people. I am to a point where I really do want to assist through Christ. It's nothing for me to make a 45-minute trip a day or something. If somebody just needs somebody to talk to or to take calls at 2 a.m, that happens to me a lot. And I enjoy it when I can see hope in somebody's eyes. Like when I was first doing my testimony, I got cut off because they thought I was drawing too much center of attention, which is just, it's petty stuff you're going to have to deal with. Believe it or not, people out there can be envious that you had to die to, there's no way I would want anybody to go through what I went through, but I wouldn't take it back. It is the biggest blessing in my life. And I've definitely learned from it. It doesn't mean that anybody needs to take it as far as I did or be as selfish and self-centered and arrogant as I was. But getting back to it, seeing that hope in one person's eyes, I know one guy that I spoke to in a testimony group grabbed me afterwards and he started crying. And he was talking about really leaving rehab that day because he was an emotional mess, which does happen when you come off all those intoxicants. And, people were making fun of him for crying, that's not the facility's fault. That's just the way people in general can be. But he said my story gave him some hope that he can go on and do better and conquer these battles. And, I always strongly say, even if I'm not all the time preaching or putting memes up on the Facebook about, Bible verses, I actually leave it. I think there's more to be done through action than there ever is in these words, because there's plenty of people who speak so good, praise Jesus, and those same people are stealing your wallet out of your back pocket while they're doing that. And I wanted to get more into that, and something I'm sure more of you out there really have to deal with a lot is trying to explain the hypocrisy in the Christian church. Now, I was talking to a newer friend of mine, Derek, the other day, and he brought up some really good points that Christianity's been persecuted for many years, and that is true. In everything I know, that is true. But what we're looking at from here now is we've got Christians opening up doors, or they're not Christians, they're opening up doors for persecution. I know, for example, Greg Locke, I've been studying the heck out of this guy. He's a very much a do as I say, not as I do person. The IRS has recently stripped him of his tax exempt status because I watched one sermon where, truth be told, I am a Democrat and I have been for many, many years. But he said you can't be a Democrat and be a Christian because Democrats slaughter babies. And he wanted everybody in his church that was in his church that was registered Democrat to get out of his church. Well, this has made him popular, really popular with the Trump constituent. And, I know Trump is widely defended, but to me, the hypocrisy of somebody that flat out says that only myself and God can help America now, there's a major issue right there, and there's a major flaw. Anybody, if you're a Christian, even if you're a diehard Republican, you could say, hey, you're supposed to be speaking for me. Don't say that. It takes Jesus out of the equation. So what that falls into is like a lot of churches around my area where you go straight from you worship the church and the preacher to God. Jesus is not left in the mix. That doesn't mean they don't constantly say Jesus that, Jesus this. But a lot of them I catch saying they speak directly to God. And the failure of the liaison that Jesus is just not there. So they're making themselves all powerful. And I get it when people get trapped up in money and power, because it does happen. And you've got to really be cognitive of that, because in my deep thoughts, going back to when this all started, when I started healing by the grace of God, my first inclination was to go back, go rack it up in the car business again. I mean, there were weeks when I made $3,000 or $4,000, and that's per week, and that was good money for somebody with no kids and no responsibility. And so, but the more I prayed on it, and the more I started doing testimony and taking the pride out, and I don't act like I'm elite because I'm sober. I act like I am a child of God who was saved by the grace of God, who didn't necessarily deserve it. And it is overwhelming at times. You know, why me? Why me? Why me? I ask myself enough. And it comes back to me that God somehow, some way called on me because of the voice I have, maybe the writing skills I have, maybe the speaking ability I have, or maybe it's just the heart that he gave me life with, and that I've never quite used as much as I should. And you really got to think about this. I need to put these up on here. I still haven't figured out the whole Endure Entertainment Television and the StreamYard. Sorry about that. But I'll get there. And, I look back, I think it's really healthy for me in particular to go back and look at myself, green, gaunt, dead. You can't make out my words unless you run it through a program, and you can hear, help me in some of them, let me go in peace. I mean, I was not cognitive because when you get to the point where I was, you have ammonia that gets up into your brain, and it's like you don't know what's real, you don't know what's not real. I would be up at 4 a.m. trying to escape the hospital. I did escape once, and somehow I got from Richmond to Lexington. No wallet, nothing. Nobody knows how I got there to this day. And that's scary, but I'll tell these stories because it's real. You're encouraged not to tell stories that may, again, trigger people. But it is what it is. And even with some of my own group, they don't agree with me on triggers, which I appreciate. That's the reason we all have opinions and do this. And, I try and get mine more into a theory sense and weigh it out on a scale of what's good and bad. I know for me, I can promise you and hand on the Bible, for me to drive by a liquor store these days and not think twice about it, even if I'm having the worst day, is a pretty cool thing. And that is a blessing from God. That is the type of freedom when they say that God breaks chains that you actually get to enjoy and experience. And quick commercial break. I was supposed to put the commercial for my friend Corey Thomas, our pastor, minister Corey Thomas Ministries, commercial for his new book, which is Sound Advice. And I've read this thing 3 times. I'm not kidding. I've actually started using it in some of my testimonial teachings, because it takes you to a place of understanding that you won't find anywhere else. And it's just brilliant. It's beautiful. And I can't say enough about buying this book, but it's CoreyThomasMinistries.com. It's all over my Facebook. Again, it's Sound Advice. About the author, Corey Thomas is a former NFL player with the Detroit Lions and Miami Dolphins. While attending Duke University as a student athlete, he set several records, including an NCAA record in 1997. Corey Thomas is a global evangelist that hails from the eastern part of North Carolina, a husband, a father, and the son of parents who are rooted in the faith. His mantra is this: I never lose, I either win or I learn. And you know what? I'm really blessed to call him a friend, because years ago, when he befriended me, I felt like he was beating the Bible on my head. And at first, I really, didn't take to him very much. But in the experiences I've had, whenever I've really been down and hurting and stuff like that, I can always reach out to Minister Thomas. And it's a phenomenal friendship. I do know this year at some point, we're planning on it now, except I haven't planned it with Corey, of course, because I still get to that thing that, it's my rules. But to, move forward with that and get baptized through Corey, because I have been baptized about 10 years ago. And I did it at a super mega church, and the girl I was dating would not let it go. And so I more or less did it for just to get her to shut up, honestly. And I feel like it was so disingenuous that I really want to do it properly. And now, with a life lived through Christ, it's pretty important to me. That's like the true graduation. I don't count the days of being without alcohol or anything like that. I do know that last week, it was a year ago, that I passed away and had to be resuscitated, which is, it's phenomenal to think back on. But for somebody who wasn't supposed to be here past September of last year, that's pretty amazing. God hasn't put the expiration date on me yet. So the more I can teach, the better. I do know Nurse Beth Brown and I, and my friend Erica Burke, and Dustin Harper, and April Price, and a few of us are working on really getting a rehab open in Richmond, Kentucky, which will be faith-based, but that's not faith-based discriminatory. The way I explain it is, I like to take everybody of anything. If somebody comes in and says I'm an atheist, okay, well, let's talk about it. Maybe, just maybe, after I tell my story, instead of telling them that they're never going to get better, they don't stand no chance if they don't get in the church and do everything that they're told to do. But maybe if they look at my life from where I came, and it plants a seed that grows and festers, and in a year that person's just glory to God. That's a pretty fascinating, once again, theory on my part. But I feel if we exclude at all that we're possibly throwing somebody out there to die in the realm of what can be considered evil. So it's an interesting process. We're getting there. Like I say, I've already got my nurses gathered up, my clinicians, sober coaches. I'll be the psychologist. so on and so on. But we're looking into possibly working with domestic violence as well, and suicide, something I very much take close to my heart, and mental illness. So that's a lot of what I'm there for. And I think of all the things I do now, that my testimony is probably the most important thing when it comes to it. Is I don't, there's no question in my mind that I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for God and what He picked me up to do and be and become. It's a fascinating life, and it's a beautiful life now compared to what it was, because no matter what I had, and I say this repeatedly, that the most money I ever made was the most miserable I ever was, because I didn't have anything in here. And mention as well too that when I was in the hospital, I fully realized my heartache and the loss of God and any kind of relationship with Christ. And that was a tough pill to swallow, but it was true. And I've come leaps and bounds since then, and it's really through Jesus. And I can't say that enough. And I'm not the only person out there that Jesus is going to pick up, and I'm excited for that possibility. So plant the seeds, weed the garden, and move on from there. And it's, again, I'm so blessed, believe you me, with the people around me. The more I learn from them and all of our different walks of life, it's it's such an amazing, beautiful journey. And I'll tell you what, I'll leave you all with a devotion tonight, because I really like to do them. I do them for myself, but I always seem to misplace the book. Now, the way I always do that, this is fascinating. I haven't done any different since I first realized this, but I'll pick this book up and I literally just flip onto a page and not even looking at it. But all right, this is day 243 in the Celebrate Recovery daily devotional, the 365-day daily devotional, 35th anniversary edition. And this is from Isaiah 53:5 is what starts it. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we were healed. And this goes into the devotion part now. A man once told me that he felt like a little boy in a man's body. When things got tough, he would always revert to that little boy and run away and hide. This man had suffered some pretty traumatic stuff in his life, especially from other men. When he felt threatened or challenged, he would isolate himself or even lash out at others. Even in the best of times, he kept a distance from others. In an effort to protect himself, he formed no real relationships. The man said that for many years he listened to Satan's lies and even carried them into his marriage. All of that unresolved junk from his past kept him handcuffed and emotionally to a frightened little 9-year-old boy. Today, this man is no longer bonded to the boy. He has finally found the courage to reach out for help. In recovery, gave him the courage to face the past and deal with it. He says that when things get tough, he's still tempted to shrink back into defense mode. He can still hear the little boy saying, "Run and hide, and it will all go away." But now he heeds Christ's words instead. "Come to me, and I will lead you through the fiery trial." Instead of running to hide, he runs to God and finds grace, mercy, love, and strength enough to face his past and be the man God created him to be. The prayer for this is, "Father, quiet the turmoil within, and when the scary trials come, help me to stand and fight with you by my side. In Jesus' name, amen." And that's the reason I do that. I don't think that could have been more fitting to my story tonight than it was, but I'll let it go for tonight. Next week, I'm going to ask Miss Falana for an extra episode. And I've got some guests that want to come on with me and talk about some things, but I do want to talk about the political rigmarole right now and why we're so distant and really false idol worship. So we'll go through it, but I love you all. And thank you for listening tonight. Thank you for being here. I genuinely mean that. And God bless.